Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing more of the +1 seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which, whenever we play a unit, we will also spawn in a 1-power copy of that unit. And we've already had our 2 regularly allotted viable decks for this event, and that means today, it's meme time. So we're going to use an absolutely ridiculous deck that is very inconsistent, but when it works, it is insane, and led me to what is probably my most epic match I've ever played. So let's go give it a look. Alright, so today we're going to be playing a Scoia'Tael Guerilla Tactics deck, and don't worry, it is not an Idarran plus Snowdrop deck. Except it does have Idarran. Okay, it's a wholesome meme, I swear. So the theory is relatively simple. So first off, we'll play Idarran, and as you guys probably know, in this event, when you play Idarran, he will spawn in copies of himself until he fills an entire row. And so we'll use our leader ability to move 3 of those copies into the other row to create a little bit of additional space. Next, we will play Madoc, who Idarran will create a ton of copies of, giving us lots of potential for damage and carryover whenever we play a bomb. Then at the start of our next turn, we'll use the order ability on the 2 Madocs that do not have Doom, because all the ones created from Idarran will gain Doomed, which means they will just disappear completely if we use that order, but more on that later. Next, we will play Milva Sharpshooter, and so we'll fill whatever room we have remaining on the board. Then at the start of our next turn, we should have 2 Milvas that do not have Doomed, and so we can use the order ability on either one of them to take out one of the 1-power units that our opponent spawns in, to put that Milva back into our deck and create a little bit of board space for us. And with that board space, we will use Siegfried to purify all of the cards on the board, which importantly includes all of the Madocs and Milvas that we created from Idarran that had the Doom status, which means they would have gotten destroyed if we ever used their order abilities. But after Siegfried purifies that Doom status, now we legitimately have all of the Milvas and Madocs we could ever want, and they're usable. So that's the big combo in the deck, but now I'll flip through to show you what else we have, and basically everything else is here as either a tutor to get those cards, or a bomb for Madoc, or something that moves cards to set up Milva. Or Decoy. If you're feeling extremely ambitious, try to somehow replay one of those cards. Good luck. And Malena is just amazing for Milva because we could potentially get 2 rounds of all of our Milvas coming out from our deck each turn, which is just absurd. And Dol Blathanna Sentry, although doesn't move a card directly, if we play it in our melee row, will damage our opponents whenever their units move, which is a way to just make it a little bit easier to take out cards with your Milvas to set up their death blow. And then Squirrel is here just in case your opponent is using Idarran and you feel like you want to banish it. That way you have an answer. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, we have a totally ridiculous combo that, when it works, is awesome. But, full disclosure, it is extremely inconsistent because it is incredibly draw dependent. So although we do have a lot of tutors in here like Oneiromancy, Alzur's Double Cross, and Marching Orders, as well as even Curse Scroll, which all help the consistency, I still cannot recommend that you use this deck unless you are feeling patient and willing to either just deal with it when you don't get the right combination of cards to pull it off, or forfeit and start a new match so you can start again as quickly as possible. So like I said, it is definitely a meme, and by no means do I recommend that you use this as your go-to deck in this event. If you're looking for one of those decks, then check out our +1 playlist, including the Skellige and Firesworn decks that we used recently. But with that said, if you can pull off this combo, then this deck's potential is limitless. So let's go see it in action, including what is probably the single most epic match I've ever played. Alright, so going up against Scoia'Tael here, and we'll go first, and that is helpful because that means we'll get our stratagem, which helps us get a card out from our deck. And the 4 things we need here are Madoc, Milva, Siegfried, and of course Idarran. We have 2 of those in our hand. We can use Alzur's Double Cross to get Idarran, and Marching Orders can give us Milva. So that means we have everything we need, and other than that, it's just a matter of personal preference. And I'll swap out the Dol Blathanna Sentry because although it deals damage when we move an opponent, it does not help us summon Milva or Madoc directly. The Squirrel also doesn't summon them, but we're going against Scoia'Tael Guerilla tactics, and so there's a very good chance they're going to use Idarran, and that's what the Squirrel is here for, so we'll keep it. Now, round 1 is all about setting up our combo to create a bunch of copies of Madoc and Milva, and the first step is to get out these Idarrans. And I'm deliberately going to play Idarran in the melee row where we have our stratagem because, in this case, board space is going to be our limiting factor, not our number of Idarrans. And speaking of board space, that's why we'll move 3 Idarrans into the other row with our leader ability to create space to spawn in those Milvas and Madocs. And one of the reasons why this combo can be difficult to pull off is because as soon as people see you spam Idarran like this, they oftentimes forfeit because they're fearful of the Idarran plus Snowdrop combo. But I don't think this person will forfeit, because that combo is probably what they're going to try to use on us. Ooh, but they removed 3 Idarrans, and those are the 3 that were the most important for us. Because now we're going to run out of space in our melee row unless we use Samum on our Idarrans in the melee row to move them. Obviously that stinks because that means we have to destroy an Idarran, but it is necessary because we're out of leader ability charges and we can't use any of our movement units because otherwise Idarran would create copies of those units and take up valuable board space. So with fewer Idarrans, that means that our combo will not be as effective as it would have otherwise been, but as long as these Idarrans stay alive, then we can still pull it off. Ooh, and they play Malena, which is further indication that they are probably an Idarran Snowdrop deck, but more importantly means that they're going to try to move around our Idarrans to minimize the amount of units that we spawn in. So you could maybe make the case for playing our own Milva here, but our board space is still going to be very limited, so we don't want to spawn in a bunch of copies of her. Let's create a little space by using our stratagem to get Oneiromancy, and yeah, Squirrel is our most disposable card. So now let's play Madoc, because that is a card that we want to create a bunch of copies of. But notice how the 2 Madocs in our range row do not have the Doom status, whereas all of the Madocs that the Idarran spawned in our melee row do. And if you use the order ability for a Madoc or a Milva that has Doomed, then they will get banished, and obviously we don't want that, so that's why we need Siegfried later on to remove that Doomed status. When that's Gimpy Gerwin, and that is a great anti-Idarran card, so they were definitely prepared for the Idarran plus Snowdrop combo, but the Madocs should still be a surprise. But as you see here, they have what it takes to get rid of all of our remaining Idarrans. Then they use Malena to move 2 of our Madocs into the range row. I assume that's to set up some kind of row damage on their next turn. And so with no Idarrans left, that means that we're only going to get 2 Milvas now, but let's still go for it. Because we can get rid of one of those Malenas, and the Gimpy Gerwin, and there were no Doomed statuses on those Milvas, so that means they'll go back into our deck. And those were our 2 Madocs that didn't have Doomed, so they'll go into our graveyard. As a reminder, it is only the copies that Idarran creates that have the Doomed status, and if a Madoc or Milva has Doomed, then don't use their order ability until you play Siegfried. And Siegfried is what we're going to play next, so that means these Madocs just need to survive one more turn. Except they'll use Samum to destroy one of them, and as we demonstrated earlier, that is another Idarran-centric card, and so that further reinforces that we're probably going to see that from them later on. But no Madocs popping out, so that probably means it will be Snowdrop that they focus on creating copies of. Now here's Siegfried for the Purification. That removes the Doom status from our Madocs, which means we can use their order abilities now. And with that, that means our combo is now complete. Obviously, they destroyed some of our Idarrans, which reduced the total number of units that we were able to create copies of, but at this point the game plan becomes simple. Move cards for Milva, play bombs for Madoc. But the greatest strength of this deck is the carryover that those cards will give us in round 2 and round 3. For that reason, you can often justify passing as soon as you finish pulling off the combo. However, I think we can push a little bit more in round 1, because they don't have many points right now. So if we get the Madocs back out here, then we should retake the lead. And they'll pass, giving us the round 1 win, and that is huge because round 1 is our weakest round. Okay, we've already set up our combo, which means in round 2 and round 3, we're looking to emphasize synergies with whichever card we created more copies of, and in this case, that's Madoc. So let's try to replace some of our movement cards with bombs. Though given our lack of Milvas, having the Dol Blathanna Sentry to give us more damage whenever we move an opposing unit could be a helpful way to set up those death blows. And we played one more card than our opponent in round 1, so we'll dry pass here. Although, to be honest, if you win round 1 against Idarran plus Snowdrop, then pushing in round 2, even if you're card down, is probably worth doing to see if we can bleed out any of the important cards for their combo. And that ability on their Scoia'Tael is going to be the way that they move their Idarrans in round 3. Alright, so once again, prioritizing bombs over movement in round 3 because we have more Madocs than we have Milvas. Okay, and don't let those Dol Blathanna Sentries fool you. That is probably just a way to boost their Idarrans when they move them, to make it harder for us to get rid of them. Fortunately, although they thought that was going to help them increase the chances of their Idarrans surviving, now that means we have time to set up some of our damage. So let's deliberately summon both the Madocs and the Milvas, using a bomb that moves our opponents. Not only does that mean we can use a lot of damage to destroy Idarrans on our next turn, it also moves that Dol Blathanna Sentry into the melee row where it's no longer going to boost their Idarrans. And so that may be why we see them playing additional Dol Blathanna Sentries here, rather than going straight into the Idarrans. They'll also use their last leader ability charge to move that Dol Blathanna Sentry from the melee row back into the range row, but remember, the Scoia'Tael is going to be the primary way that they move those Idarrans. Fortunately for us, we still have several ways we can move those Dol Blathanna Sentries into the melee row. One being Malena, the other being Nivellen. And although Malena moves one less unit on this turn, she can move units every turn, so since it's still early in the round, I think we probably do start with her. Technically, it does give them a small boost in the short term, but this is so minor in comparison to what they are about to do that it is statistically insignificant. Not to mention, we can start using these Madocs, and that will be enough damage to destroy that Dol Blathanna Sentry in the range row. So they'll play Oneiromancy, and I suspect this is probably the moment we've been waiting for, because here is our dishonorable guest. Too bad you gave us time to prepare a welcoming party. And as expected, they used Scoia'Tael to move those Idarrans into the other row. And now I think what we do here is we play our Dol Blathanna Sentries in the melee row. That way, each Malena can use her order ability to destroy one Idarran per turn. Then, of course, the Idarrans are also easy targets for Milva. Then, after the damage from Madoc, they have just 2 Idarrans left, significantly reducing their ability to spawn additional cards. Well, except they're not done here. They'll use Renew to get Idarran back. Except while that might have seemed like a great strategy, they are now going to fill both of their rows entirely with Idarrans. Which now means the only way they'll have room to spawn in additional units would be if some of those Idarrans get destroyed. So that means that suddenly we do not want to damage them anymore, because they are currently completely clogged. However, unfortunately, there is still one more turn of Cataclysm in their melee row, which will likely destroy a few of those Idarrans. So now that means our new plan is to put up as many points as we can, while minimizing the number of units that we destroy on their side. Trained Hawk is nice because it has that Harmony, which can give us a few more points, and let's deal the damage, but deliberately target a Idarran that will not get destroyed. Oh, and we got pretty lucky there. Cataclysm only destroyed 1 unit, so whatever card they squeeze in here better be a good one. And they choose Nivellen for movement, which will destroy one of our Dol Blathanna Sentries, because they have some Dol Blathanna Sentries in their melee row. Now, in the interest of getting more Harmony boosts when we play our Witcher Saboteur, let's go Oneiromancy into another Trained Hawk, and deliberately target another unit that will not get destroyed. Oh, right. Their Dol Blathanna Sentries still outnumber ours. Okay, so no, we will not use Malena's order ability. Okay, and they'll use Teleportation here, which, if they're using it on a gold unit, means that they're just resetting Idarran's power. So, not a huge play, but they do still have some ways to generate points. Now let's go Land of 1,000 Fables. And since we're trying to avoid damage, let's go with Decoy on our 1-power Malena, because as we said, her order ability now is pretty much useless. And for what it's worth, playing Milva means we just created another copy of her. Ooh, Stammelford's Tremors is well done. That's a good source of damage, so yes, they're still finding some ways to score points and deal damage. And now let's go Witcher Saboteur. And because both of their rows are completely full means we can't use his deploy ability, but that's fine because we actually don't want to deal that damage. Okay, now this is what we expected to see. They just have to discard cards because they don't have any room to play units. So they may no longer be able to do anything, and now let's break out the Madocs. Once again, deliberately not destroying a unit with our damage here, because we don't want to unclog them, but with the Madocs out, we now have the lead. And they forfeit, so there you have it. The Super Madoc plus Milva combo defeats the Idarran Guerilla Tactics meta. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here, and we'll go first, and that is very important because our deck is very draw dependent, and so getting that stratagem to pick a card from our deck is very useful. So we need 4 things in our hand, otherwise our combo doesn't work. Idarran, Madoc, Milva, and Siegfried. So if we swap out a non-essential card and get Siegfried, that's huge. Alzur's Double Cross would have been a way to get Idarran, although now all we need is this Oneiromancy. And since we have every other card that we need in our hand, we are good to go. So round 1 is all about using our combo to create a bazillion copies of Madoc and Milva. And the first step is to get Idarran on the board. And I'm deliberately going to play Idarran in the melee row where we have our stratagem because, in this case, board space is going to be our limiting factor, not our number of Idarrans. Then we move 3 Idarrans into the other row using our leader ability charges. And now we pray that they don't mess with those Idarrans. Oh, but I'm afraid they do with Stammelford's Tremors that will destroy several of our Idarrans. However, we can still proceed with the plan. And that means next on the to-do list is to play Madoc. And so we will still spawn in additional Madocs here, it's just not quite as many as if all of our Idarrans had survived. And similarly here, we need our Idarrans and Madocs to survive just a couple more turns. And fortunately, they go with Magni Division here, so it doesn't look like they're going to deal any damage to us. And while we have all these Madocs on the board, we can only use the order ability of Madoc or Milva if they do not have the Doomed status, and so these 2 ones in the melee row we can use, but the other ones are going to need to wait until we purify Doomed using Siegfried. But before we do that, let's play Milva to spawn in additional copies of her as well. And unfortunately, although Milva does have Zeal, so we could use the 2 order abilities on the Milvas in the melee row that do not have Doomed, they don't have any 1-power units for us to take out and trigger Deathblow, since both those Magni Divisions got boosted. And they go with the Emissary here, which is devious, because that is a nice workaround to make it so that they still don't have any 1-power units for us to hit with Milva. In which case, it's time to play Siegfried to purify the Doom status off of all of our Milvas and Madocs. That means we can now use their order abilities without banishing them in the process. So we'll definitely do that for the Madocs. The problem is we still don't have targets for the Milvas, and we need to find a way to trigger those death blows in order to send them back into our deck. Otherwise, we won't get a carryover from them in round 2 and round 3. So just in case we're at risk of stranding these Milvas, let's take Decoy with their stratagem so we can at least put 1 back into our deck. So they'll use a Samum, which unfortunately does destroy one of our Milvas, and they'll try to clog our range row here, which doesn't really matter because Idarran's already done his job. The combo is complete, we just need to find a way to get the Milvas back into our deck. And we still don't have any targets for Milva, unless we set her up using one of our bombs to apply some damage. Which, of course, will summon the Madocs back out from our graveyard, but that's secondary at the moment. The primary purpose was at least to give 1 Milva a target, so now we just need 4 more. Then they'll go with Yennefer Conjurer, which is great for dealing damage. However, we have some higher power units that the first couple rounds are going to hit, and it's not going to deal a ton of damage to us yet. And also, that 1 power unit will be a great target for one of our Milvas. And they use their leader ability to play a card from our hand. I don't think they're going to be impressed with the results. It's a Trained Hawk, which they use to destroy an Idarran. Fortunately for us, we didn't need him anymore. So I'd much rather they destroy that than a Milva. And now there are 2 easy targets for Milva. But unfortunately, no great way to set up the death blows on our other Milvas, so I think we'll be relying fairly heavily on the damage from the Cataclysm to do that. And now what we want to do is just not move one of our opponent's units, otherwise we'll get our other Milvas out from our deck back onto the board, and we're trying to keep them in our deck for the carryover. So I think that means we go with Samum and then we just don't trigger the death blow. Which of course also gets the Madocs back out, which should give us a pretty sizable lead. And then it's a Sire to get a card from their graveyard back into their deck, and I'm not sure which one they chose. But it does mean we have one more target for Milva. And we're running out of cards that will not bring the other Milvas back out from our deck. And it's probably going to need to be Decoy, except we still have 4 Milvas in our deck, so we might exchange one Milva and get another in return. Oh, wait, we don't have any more bombs. I shouldn't have done that. Well, we'll keep our other Madocs on the board. And now, cross your fingers. Oh, that's not what we wanted. Well, on the bright side, it does mean we spawn in one additional Milva. Oh, wait, we still have Idarran. Make that 5 Milvas. The ones in our range row have doomed because Idarran created them, which means they'll never go back into our deck, but they could help set up the death blow on the other Milvas. So if we use all of their orders, then we can at least get the death blow on one of those Milvas to put it back into our deck. So now that means none of the Milvas on the board can ever make it back into our deck, so we're probably looking to end this round now. And they'll pass, so that's perfect timing. So that means we'll take the round 1 win with the carryover from, I think it's 5 Milvas and 6 Madocs. And we draw into Milva, which we actually could have played to create an additional copy of it, but of course managing the death blow can be a little tricky, and marching orders would have given us a Milva, so that's why I got rid of that as well, and naturally we get a Milva in return. And we did play one more card than our opponent in round 1, so we'll probably dry pass here. If we really wanted to, we could meme and play another Milva to create another copy of it, but let's keep it simple for now. Though, to be fair, if you are a fan of pushing hard in round 2, then we certainly have enough carryover that we could have given that a shot. And Anna and Rieta is a good play because they get our leader ability, and it's basically a source of carryover. Okay, and once again, because we have so many Milvas in our deck, we have a pretty high chance of drawing into them here. So okay, if you wanted us to try to spawn in more Milvas, there you have it. We'll spawn an additional Milva when we play this one from our hand. So they'll start with a blue dream. Hey, wait, no! That's impossible! I can't believe what I just witnessed. Not only did they just steal Idarran from our graveyard, they even stole our leader ability so that they could move those Idarrans to the other row, giving them a legitimate Idarran setup. Okay, that's it. Release the Madocs, release the Milvas. And now, it's time to dance. Alright, Milva, let's crash this party. No, you wouldn't. Okay, it's the Yennefer they played from round 1. Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary. Time to remind them not to mess with Milva. What's this? They have reinforcements? No way. Are you actually kidding me right now? I cannot believe it. Well, at least their melee row is clogged. Okay, so we really don't want to destroy those Idarrans, in which case I guess we go with Milva here. Because we can take out that 1 power Yen. Okay, and maybe I'll get a little greedy here and take out one of those Idarrans to put this Milva back into our deck as well. So that means whatever unit they play next, they'll get one additional copy from those Idarrans. Yeah, except there's a Samum, so they were ready to unclog themselves. That means using Milva was the right move, but those Idarrans are still extremely dangerous. And fortunately, we have enough Milvas now that if we move one of their units, we'll get them all out, and that should be enough damage to destroy even a 6-power Idarran. And of course, now these Milvas can clean up the scraps. So now we have them down to one Idarran, but who knows what tricks they might still have up their sleeve. Okay, and it's Snowdrop, and this is the most dangerous combo that they could have, because each Snowdrop's order boosts all the other Snowdrops as well. So if we hadn't destroyed all those other Idarrans, then of course they would have way more Snowdrops, and they would be able to score at least 300 points on this turn alone. Okay, and we're starting to run low on bombs, so I think what that means is we want to find a way to move our opponent's units as often as possible to get as much damage as we can out of the Milvas. Then we'll use whatever bombs we have left to weaken their units to help set up the Milva death blows. With that in mind, let's go Oneiromancy into Malena to maximize the amount of movement. And then if we use her on that Idarran, all the Milvas coming out of our deck will deal enough damage to significantly weaken that Idarran, getting it down to just 1 power, setting it up for a Milva death blow. And then it's Cantarella. I'm not sure they could be more of a supervillain if they tried. Fortunately, it doesn't really matter if they move our units. Alright, so now obviously we'll use a Milva to destroy their 1-power unit, and I think it's finally time to summon the Madocs. Let's use the Moon Dust to weaken Yennefer, and here comes the cavalry. Not to mention, we can get the death blow on one of our Milvas. Okay, so then they go coup de grace to get rid of one of our Malenas and create a couple copies of their own. So now let's activate all of our Madocs. Then use the Dol Blathanna Sentry in the melee row so that we deal damage to their units whenever we move them with Malena. But first, we trigger Milva's Death Blow, because when we use Malena, we'll get out all of our Milvas. And we actually had more damage than we needed in that case, so it might have been better to target a Snowdrop. Okay, and then they have another Yennefer? What is this black magic? Okay, so obviously we'll take out the weaker of the two Yennefers. Then let's use Malena to move the other one, which of course means that a Milva can't single-handedly remove it. However, it might be worth using 2 Milva order abilities to get rid of it, and living with only having one of those Milvas go back into our deck. Especially because this late in the round, there may not be enough opportunities to trigger all those Milva death blows. And I guess we could take the same approach with the Vrihedd Dragoon as well. So now let's bring back both the Madocs and the Milvas. And they pass! So somehow, some way, we win the most epic match I have ever played. So there's a look at a totally insane Madoc/Milva Scoia'Tael deck for the new +1 seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below. Let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.